Welcome to the Elevate podcast, the thought leadership platform designed for behavioral health executives navigating growth, innovation, and impact. I'm your host, Gary Garth. I'm the founder of Elevate, and I'm very passionate about helping treatment centers unlock their full potential. Each week, we sit down with the top minds in behavioral healthcare, unpacking the key drivers of success for patient acquisition, whether that's how to create an ideal tech stack, proven marketing tactics, process optimization, AI, and any overall growth strategies that will help drive your census. So whether you're looking to scale emissions, optimize operations, or just stay ahead of industry trends, this is your front row seat to the conversations that matter the most. And today's guest, I'm very excited to introduce, is Trevor Rand. He's an account strategist at Google and a vertical specialist in the substance use disorder industry. And Trevor brings a wealth of insight into how behavioral health facilities can adapt to the rapidly changing digital landscape, especially with the rise of AI-driven search and the new innovations in Google Ads and YouTube ads and overall patient acquisition strategies. In this episode today, we're going to be diving deep into how AI overviews are transforming search, what this means for treatment centers, and how to leverage data-driven tactics to acquire high-value patients more effectively than ever before. So whether you're a behavioral health executive, facility owner, admissions coordinator, or software provider in this space, then you want to take notes of this episode. With that said, welcome, Trevor. What's up, my man? How you doing?
Great, Gary. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. For the audience, I've been working with Trevor on a couple of accounts. I've worked with Google for 15 years previously, and it's safe to say that I met few as Trevor that is such dialed into an industry as you are with the in substance use disorder campaign. So I'm very, very excited to go through what we have to share with us today. Trevor's put together a deck. Thank you for that. And covering a couple of key topics that are interesting. Trevor, do you want to give us a quick overview of today's topics, and we'll just take it from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to cover today what was most relevant in the space for behavioral health centers in the United States that I'm working with. My team specifically covers probably 30 of the top largest behavioral health centers in the US right now. And personally, I'm working with quite a few of them. What my clients have been saying to me in this space right now is, how is search changing and evolving with AI? How is that going to affect my ads? How should I be prepared for this? How should I be thinking about this? And it's all new to everyone, right? So everyone is learning as we go, and the space is rapidly changing and evolving. And so, what I want to do today is hopefully give everyone a clear sense of the picture of where everything is at right now, where the space is going to be going within Google search, and again, how that will impact behavioral health centers moving forward. And then something else that is really big that a lot of behavioral health centers are wanting to try is YouTube as well. So I wanted to talk about YouTube as a platform overall, and then also specifically YouTube ads as well, and how you can use that as kind of a digital billboard to market your business. So that's everything I want to cover today, and I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I know. Speaking with our 30 plus facilities and several that we work with together, it comes up in every single status call. Like, how should I go on this? How are we considering this in our Q3 strategy? How we optimize? What kind of new campaign types? Very, very excited to go through the topics that you highlighted today. With that said, why don't we just take it from the top and start with how AI overviews work and how that impacts treatment facilities?
Yeah, for sure. So what's happening right now in the space is different in that Google has released a lot of products over the last few years, right? Performance Max, Demand Gen, right? But this is really the first time in 2025, probably for the last 5 to 10 years, that there's actually a big change happening within Google search, right? And the way that people are searching are different. What the actual search result page looks like is different. And then now we are going to be releasing AI mode as well, where people can actually interact with, ask questions with, and even voice talk on their phone when they are searching things on Google, right? So it's changing very quickly. And what I want to talk through today, specifically, before we even get into the ad side, is just how this is all looking in the space right now, how this all works. So we can keep going here. So like I mentioned, 15% of searches every day happening on Google are new. What I mean by that is, how people used to Google things is you would just type in the one or two words that you were looking for, right? You would say, looking for this, or I want to do this. Now people are asking more questions than ever. People are asking very long, how do I think about this? What is your thought process on this? Or all of those types of things. And so this landscape is changing, and what we're trying to do is give people the best results that they can.
A very good point. And that's a mind-staggering number. That's still to this day that 15% of all queries are new. This means, not in that syntax that it's not necessarily the same queries at all time. When I speak with prospects or clients, they're like, how can you rank me for these 10 keywords? I want to be best rehab near me. And they come with a notion that they have a Google Ads campaign. They see the actual keyword, or maybe it's 5-10 years ago, they're thinking that's the exact query. But they don't understand the search term report, the millions of variations of how people are actually finding them. And I think what's really interesting with AI overview is also you can catch people, if you think this way, at all the different stages before they're actually at the decision-making process. So targeting prospective patients throughout the entire admissions journey not only gives you maybe a more cost-effective cost per admission, but just make sure that you have sufficient touch points to stand out from competition. So a little bit understanding the mechanism and adjusting to this AI overview will basically give you a competitive edge. So how does this AI overview work, and what triggers search results? Educate us a little bit on that, Trevor, please.
Yeah, sure, of course. So I'm sure if you Googled something in the last 6 months, you've seen an AI overview probably come up in something that you've Googled. And basically what it is instead of showing you the search results page, how it would look normally, a year, 2 years ago, what it looks like now is we'll actually be able to scan all of the websites, or index all of the websites that are showing the results, and come up with an AI summary, maybe in like a paragraph or two, trying to answer your questions best we can, right? And right now in the United States, the AI overviews are showing on roughly about 30% of searches that are happening right now. So what I have here is, what this is showing is when we're showing AI overviews on informational searches, what I mean by that is where we're calling it a complex query. There's no one right answer, right? So you see here at the top with this example query, where do I take my car if it won't jumpstart? That's a pretty easy one. You need to take it to a mechanic probably. Or if you're saying, where's the nearest McDonald's near me, right? Like, those are all pretty easy. We don't really need to give you an AI explanation of what to do there, right? But what's happening, and you see with some of these other examples, what to pack for a month in New York City. How do you make suede leather boots smooth? There's a bunch of different ways that you can do these. And I said, there's no one right answer. So what these AI overviews are doing is they're taking a combination of what's showing on the search results page, and then we're trying to show you an AI overview, and trying to give you the best answer there right on the direct search results page.
Fantastic.
What is going to change? Yeah. And really quickly here, what is going to change over the next 6 months? And I think this is going to be big come next year, is in these AI overviews, we are going to be having ads in them as well, right? And so keep on the slide that we were just on, please. But what's going to be showing here in these ads is when we won't show ads for all AI overview searches. It will only be, the key is there's a commercial intent there. The person is looking for some sort of business to help them, right? So you see the examples that we have. What is the typical time frame for wedding thank yous? We would show a wedding thank you website, or somewhere that they can create thank you notes, right? Or how do I set up a community garden in Virginia Beach? We can show them businesses that can help with that and help build that, right? So we're only going to be showing, and I guess how this would pertain to the behavioral health industry would be if someone types in where is the best place to get treatment near me? Where's the when can I get help? How soon can I go? All of these are different places where we will be showing ads in the AI overview soon.
Yeah. Okay. And how does how do you define the line between, you said ads would be triggered on queries with a commercial intent, and you always consider commercial typically in other categories, other verticals, you have commercial, navigational, and informational queries, right? So I'm just thinking, I'm a behavioral health executive or the CMO at a facility, and I'm thinking, okay, which treatment modalities is best to for cocaine addiction recovery, or which methods are proven to sustain long-term recovery? I mean, those could be considered both, I guess, informational and commercial. Where does Google draw the line versus like top-rated treatment facility near me? That's obviously commercial for context, right?
Yeah. I think this is something that's going to be evolving over time and I think improving. I think for now, though, if the search isn't purely informational, like I think one of the examples you said is like what treatments are available, maybe that's something that is commercial. But I think if it's more of I'm just trying to learn, what is addiction treatment? What is substance abuse treatment? What are the 12 steps to getting better? Those are things that maybe the person is actually not really looking to go get help right now, but maybe that person is looking just to learn how it works if they were to do it, right? And so I think what our system is best trying to decide is if that person is looking for a facility right now, immediately, that's when we should show them an ad for a facility in their area.
Absolutely. So in summary, there's no black and white. It would be very much based on intent and the profile, previous, the use intent and the search history maybe, and a lot of. I think the safest bet is then to say, do you appear on as many different queries that are both commercially and informational relevant as for touching prospective patients throughout the entire journey, which then leads me to a question that I have in mind. There's a lot of conversations on, with Google experience, expertise, authority, trustworthiness, EAT, mitigating plagiarism, authentic content, subject matter expertise, really positioning thought leaders. Will these AI overviews include AI chat generated content that people put up trying to or is it going to favorize content that's authentic, written by people with the right credentials and expertise background on the topics?
That's a great question. And it's a little bit out of my area of expertise. It's more, I think, on the SEO side than the ad side, but I am happy to talk through it to the best of my knowledge. So I think something that was always really important, Elevate does SEO, right? Something that was important a few years ago was always trying to, backfill or have a bunch of websites on your page that have a bunch of keywords in there, a bunch of pages on your website that have a bunch of keywords on there. Exactly, right? That was huge a few years ago. Now what it is if you are able to have kind of a Q&A page on your website somewhere that has all of the top questions that someone would be answering when they're looking for your facility or when they could potentially find your facility and they're in your area. If you have all of those questions answered on your website and AI overview is now scanning the internet when someone asks that question, right? And it sees that you have all of this on your website, it will pull you actually into that AI overview without an ad. I've seen this with a lot of my other clients and in other industries, right? Yes. Where, someone is saying, where's the best property to rent a house in Los Angeles, or where's the best place to live in Santa Monica? And those companies or those apartment complexes that have it on there, they're already showing in those AI views.
Yeah.
What we've actually been seeing so far this year, and this isn't from Google, I've read this on like Search Engine Land and various other articles that I've read, is that since we've rolled out this AI overview, click-through rates are actually down ever so slightly, because think about it, the person is getting their answer before even actually getting to the regular search results. They're seeing their answer right there in a paragraph in front of them written by AI, and they know what they need to do. And however, what we have seen on the flip side of that is if your business is mentioned in that AI overview, we've seen substantial increases in not only click-through rates, but conversions as well, because people see that as credible. So it is important to try and, SEO optimize, or I think the new term is called like GEO, like generative AI optimization, or something like that. That's going to be even more important as well, just alongside your ad strategy.
Absolutely. So sorry for that curveball, but you actually got it right, Trevor. It's actually on point. I'm always just looking at Elevate. We look at it as a cohesive strategy, right? And I know I'm preaching to the choir here with you. You know all of this, but if you got a search result page and you are dominating the real estate, you actually, let's say that you were actually the link in that Gemini summarized AI overview, and you were actually the contributor from the original content. You all just imagine that. So just to consider that from an SEO standpoint, I think is important, and I'm sure you're gonna expand a little bit more on that as well. So when will it be possible to run ads on these AI overviews? Is that timeline for that?
Yeah, so we're actually going to start testing this in the back half of this year. Starting in Q4, probably, we're going to be testing various different placements within the AI overview. I think what's going to happen is you'll see in 2026 more of a formalized strategy from Google saying, okay, here is where the ads will show, all of this. But as of right now, we're very early days in the testing on the AI overview ads, and what will be the best placements to try and drive users to sites from the ads.
Yeah. Oh, I'm very excited, and it's also an interesting angle to see that the early test experiments that's been running, the click-through rate actually is decreased because of the query being answered right there in the summary, and that actually even contradicts almost, you could say, Google's business model, that you would want to click on a suggested or dive deeper, stay on site, dive deeper into, but having the referring links, and then having obviously your ad correlated with the correct answer. Just from a facility standpoint, in terms of standing out as a trusted source, having the authority, credibility. I mean, it's tremendous. It's so important to prepare for this huge transformation this in search behavior, as I see it. I mean, maybe I'm too much in the technical, but you have to jump on this like all in to make sure that, otherwise future-proofing your facility, otherwise somebody's going to come and eat your lunch, that's for sure, as I see it. So just a quick notion, because you did say in the olden days and keywords and all that, you do not want to do that, audience. No keyword stuffing, no AI generated content, no toxic backlinks. That is a big no-go. Then you will be killed by the Google core update that was released a couple of days ago. So no. So let's say that I'm an advertiser, Trevor, and then I think this is a good segue into your next, how does the AI search result, how is that campaign working compared to my traditional Google search, my PMax campaign? What is the best ways to optimize performance?
Yeah, so I think a big thing here is that I say, and we say on my team, is you're only as good as the data that's in your Google Ads account, right? And the better data that you have coming in, the better data that you're going to have going out. It doesn't really matter how well we do or how many ads we show in the AI overview or on search or wherever, or on YouTube, on your campaign. If you're not tracking anything in your account, if you're not telling the campaign what's working and what's not working, right? And so from what I've working with other clients in this space is the best setup that you can have is where you're giving Google the actual VOB data as well as the actual admit data directly in your Google Ads platform and giving that back to the campaigns and saying like, hey, from what you went after, from the keywords you went after, here's the admits that we got from those searches. Here's the VOBs we got. If you're only doing calls, it's going to be hard for the campaign to know if it's working well or not, because that's the only thing it's tracking is it's trying to drive you as many calls as possible. And I don't know about you, but most of my don't make money off driving calls. So.
Amen. I got a little bit. We say, I always say there's three metrics we're really obsessed about, and one is VOBs, the context of VOBs, and then viable, qualified VOBs, depending on the levels of care and in network, out of network. There's so many different parameters to that. So understanding the dynamics between how many leads turn into VOB, how many turn into qualified VOBs, and then measuring the effectiveness of those qualified VOBs turning into admit. That's what separates the boys from the. And then essentially having a sophisticated, lifetime value per patient understanding, so you understand how much you can invest in acquiring a patient if they're there 30 days, 60 days, if they step down to a different level of care. If you get $100,000 reimbursement for a total recovery versus 30,000, there's an entire difference on how much you can afford or target per VOB for that matter. So you would. Well, you know this. You'll be surprised how many I speak with prospects, and I ask them like, "What's your cost per VOB per buy?" Very few have that are doing such, and even fewer have the visibility in terms of like which elements within the campaigns is actually converting into revenue. So, like I say in my book, "In God We Trust, Everybody Else Brings Data." What we're seeing is that fully understanding what your cost per VOB is and your cost per viable VOB is essentially the single most important metrics, because I can't control the effectiveness of an admissions team. Neither can you. We're talking with a facility. Did they follow up X amount of times? How did they build rapport? Did they have a quick verification of benefit process and come back with us? We can't control those factors. So whether they have a 60% VOB to admit rate or 10% means the world of a difference. But if I know that I'm getting a favorable cost per VOB, viable VOB, now I know that I can work on the other element. They can work on it internally, and we have a highly competitive and top performing campaign. So what are the mechanisms to say like you shouldn't just focus on clicks, calls, leads in general? Because if you are a commercially focused facility, out of network, catering to an affluent audience in California, you don't want a Medicaid lead, for instance. That's not the same value as a PPO insurance, for example. So how do you set up this measuring mechanism and optimize for it?
Yeah, great question. I think a great point that you just brought up when you said a Medicaid lead versus another lead. No two VOBs are created equal, right? And every one of them has their own different value. And so what you want to do is be able to give Google Ads that signal of how valuable that VOB was or wasn't. And then what will happen over time is the Google Ads algorithm will actually learn the personas of people that are driving higher VOBs versus lower ones. It knows their search history, their all of the different things that they're doing online, and it can say this person, or how recently have they been searching? Have they been searching about this a lot? Have they been looking to get help for a while, or are they just starting their journey, right? And what it can do then is actually go after those high quality leads for you and those high quality VOBs and potential patients for you, right? And the way that you can set this up in your Google Ads account is you can connect to your CRM. So your call rail, your call tracking metrics, or wherever you're taking calls, and have your team just score that lead and say, based on what we know about this person, based on their insurance, we know that, we might be able to have X amount of revenue or something like that. And then inputting that in, what we can do is create a formula. Like, okay, we know, like you said, we know our VOB to admit ratio is 10% or 50% or whatever it is. We can actually predict to an extent how much revenue we are going to be making off of each different campaign, right? The way that you set that up, import all that call tracking metrics data that I just explained into Google Ads and only bid towards that. We don't, again, calls are not driving revenue. Calls are important, but that's not what's driving revenue. We only want to bid towards that high value VOB and try and drive it there. So basically how it would look here is you would, as I have, import that in to Google Ads and then have your bidding going on a single stage optimization is what we call it, where you're only bidding to the one conversion action. And then from there, once the values are coming in, like I said, the algorithm has learned for a couple of weeks. That's when you would implement the value-based bidding. This whole process, when I explained it, I feel like some people, you would probably know this too, Gary, but some people get a little, they say, wow, like this seems like a big change. Like what's going to happen? And it really only is going to takes a few weeks to set up. And the clients that we set this up very oftentimes say, hey, we're driving much higher, tier 1 or tier A or however they describe it, VOBs, after just a few weeks of running this.
Yes. I think that was a great explanation, Trevor. And it may sound complex. It's not straightforward, but at the same time, it's I'm not being hyperbolic here when saying that the results of implementing this is, it's significant. I can't share specific case studies in this call, but we've both seen the impact of this. And what can be difficult, and just for context, if you have a treatment owner or admissions coordinator, some of the common problems when I speak with facilities and many of our clients, they come to us. But many don't even have a CRM, right? I ask, how do you track it? It's Excel sheet, spreadsheet, and pen and paper, and they're answering through the phones. So at Elevate, what we do is that we basically hold their hand and they say, okay, if you don't have a CRM, if you have a CRM, perfect. Let's configure the admission funnel, the stages, and all back to Google. If they have a CRM, very rarely have they set it up properly, but that's a different conversation for another podcast recording, I would say. So what's most important is if you have a call tracking solution like CTM. I'm a huge CTM fan. I worked with them for 15 years at my prior agency before Elevate. I like CallRail too, but CTM is a little bit more sophisticated for maybe the nerds, and it's very popular in the industry. So what we say and what we do is ensuring that you categorize your leads from 1 to 5 stars, and you give, for example, a Medicaid lead a 3-star, 4 stars a VOB, and 5 stars a viable VOB, and then you toggle that lead into a conversion and essentially give them a monetary value. Now, I'm telling you, this is not easy because it's like a process. You have to have SOPs and educate your admissions team and get everybody to follow it consistently. But what I typically do is that I speak with the director of admissions, and I speak with the executive or the CMO, the treatment facility owner, and I say, listen, you're up against $1 million advertisers here who's consuming a shitload of data, and they understand their ideal patient profile, their ideal client profile. They can bid towards it. So if you're coming in as a small provider in the local market, you're entering a gunfight with a knife if you are not applying this. And they're like, yeah, but my admissions team is not following the process. And I think the key is then sitting with the admissions team, and that's what I do. And then I say, listen, guys, are you tired of all these calls? And then you have to qualify them. And a lot of, I don't want, I have to answer the phone 10 times to get one good lead. Well, give us that feedback and let us tell Google what you consider a quality prospect. Like, what is the characteristics? It's standard in B2B marketing, right? But maybe in industries such as B2C, it's not as common. But in behavioral health marketing, that's so complicated. It's you have to get that right. So implementing that process, and long story short, where your admissions team is rating, then importing that data into Google is just, you are basically telling, you're telling Google that understands our profiles and our queries, and probably also the policies and assurances we have, like when to display your ads most effectively based on the value. So I can't stress how important this is. And especially if you want to test out new ad variations and formats, then get this right. And the more data you accumulate, the more precise and effective it's going to be. It's highly, highly. So thank you for expanding on that, Trevor. Like just to maybe understand this a little bit better, when you're talking about the value for example, you say have value-based bidding. Is that you would put a certain value on admissions data versus a BOB and qualified BOB in order to optimize and tell Google how to optimize the campaign better?
Yeah, great question, Gary. So in an ideal world, there's a CRM. Like you said, not everyone has this, but in an ideal world, there's a CRM, and we can track all of the revenue data that's coming from admits in the CRM, and we're passing that back into Google, and we're giving it the exact, here's how much money I spent, and here's how much money I made. Here's my profit goal. Try and drive my profit goal, right? That's an ideal world, but I think everyone knows we don't live in a perfect world, right? So there are other ways that you can set this up. I really like the method that Elevate has with the 1 through 5 star, where we can just score essentially an arbitrary value, but still tell Google the right things and give it the right signals, and saying, hey, these 5-star leads, these are worth a lot more than me, or the 5-star viable VOBs, these are worth way more than me. I assigned, let's say $100 value to this, and then the 4 stars get a $50 value, and the 3 stars, the Medicaid ones that we're not really looking for, get a $10 value. And so what we're essentially doing is telling Google, hey, try and drive me as many of these 4 and 5 stars as you can, while still also giving it that data that, hey, these 3-star ones that we were getting, these Medicaid ones, like, we weren't looking for these. We're still telling you, like, yes, you found someone, but it's much lower value. Don't try and prioritize these in the future for our campaigns. And like I said, it does take some time to learn, but over time you will see that it will learn and drive you more of those 4 and 5-star leads that you're looking for.
Amen. And maybe for context for behavioral health facilities, obviously it depends on your program, the levels of care, in-network, out-network, your reimbursement rates. But you're probably talking about a value-based bidding where you would want to say $1,500 for a VOB. And sometimes I've seen $3,000 to $5,000 valued at a viable VOB, because that's like a perfect, and they convert at a very, very high rate. And depending on your lifetime value of a new patient, you would give it at least $8,000-$10,000 value as admission. So Google really understands, like, okay, here's where the money is. And we went a lot of these, sales qualified leads, essentially, if you compare it to other industries, right? So very important to get right, very important to feed it have the right value-based bidding strategy. And as it gets refined, I mean, we've both seen the results. I had one client I cannot mention, but they had a total of 100 extra admits in a quarter as a result of switching to this with the CRM integration, admittedly. Yeah. So it works. I think is there any minimum criteria? Like, can anybody opt into this? Is this something they should be doing tomorrow? How many conversions do you need as a minimum budget? What are the specifics?
Yeah, so typically, you want to give the system enough data to work off, right? If we're only getting 1 VOB per month, it's not really going to be enough for the system to know if it's working or not, right? What we say is, at minimum, you're trying to go for 1 per day of whatever you're measuring for. If you're measuring for admits, that's great. You try and drive 1 per day. If you're measuring for BOBs, that's great. You try and drive 1 per day. So you're looking about a 30 in a month. Typically, where I see this working the absolute best is when we're at 50 plus a month, where the system has more than 1 coming in per day. Because even, if we say 1 per day on average, there might be days where we get 0 and then we get 2 or 3. But if you have, you're getting those conversions in there every single day, we see the system try and work on that or work best in that scenario. I thought that's a great point you brought up about the lifetime value and focusing on that as well. That is a relatively new focus area that we're seeing in the industry, across other industries as well. Like a lot of my B2B SaaS clients that I'm working with, they're just getting to the point where we can see the lifetime value of the customer, and it's super important because it's very different when you're telling Google the revenue data that you're getting from someone. If you're only putting in the first time that customer or that potential patient comes to you and visits you, versus Google doesn't know if that person ends up coming 5 more times or something like that, right? And so that's a huge piece of data to be sharing. And so you really, like, if you have that data available, that is absolutely critical to be adding in as well. It will only perform that much better. So it's great that you brought that up. It's very new in the space, but it is super important, and we see it work really well too.
Yeah, amen. I go so far. People will get inquiries all the time. And Gary, can you help us with a campaign? I clarify all these aspects. I say if we launch a campaign, objectives minimum 30, ideally 50, understand who we're up against. And if they are reluctant or hesitant about making that investment, etc., I think I tell them we're not the right facility. The right partner for them. They might hear something from another agency that is what they want to hear, but if they want to be competitive, we need that, accumulate that data. And I think that's the last question before we dive into another slide, because I position this way, like, is there value? Let's say you're accumulating data and feeding Google with 50 conversions every month, whether that's you're measuring viable VOBs or VOBs and optimizing for that. Does it perform better, let's say, after 6 months and 300 VOBs? And then it's exponential, like a compounded effect from there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the first couple of months, like, you'll definitely start seeing it prioritize those higher value leads for sure, admins or whatever it is. But if you're 6 months to a year in, it is going to be absolutely night and day from the competitor down the street that's tracking calls. Like, you are going to be, like you said, blowing them out of the water every single time, in terms of performance and in terms of driving the highest quality leads that you can get. So absolutely, like, the longer this goes on, the more time the campaigns have to learn. The hard part kind of in the beginning and getting the setup correct. But once you have it going, you really don't need to be touching it and playing with it that much. Like, definitely, yes, you want to be reviewing search terms constantly, improving ad copy. But once you have that setup in place, you really should see things kind of running off on their own, especially when you're 6 months, a year in.
Exactly. So in summary, you should be starting with this yesterday. Otherwise, you're behind. You're late for the party. So what I would like to say, because your competitors is compounding all that VOB and emissions data, and it's going to be more and more difficult for you to penetrate and get success profitability with your campaigns. So speaking about campaigns and campaign types, I mean, there's so many different products and formats, and most folks just focus on high commercial intent at the bottom of the funnel, best treatment center near me. The next, I think one of the topics you want to talk about a little bit of YouTube for me is like one of the most exciting opportunities to think outside the box. I think a little long term, etc. So I would love to hear a little bit about the newest innovation in YouTube and the current state of the market.
Yeah. So a little bit about, like, the why behind it. I think this is important is behavioral health facilities are always trying to look for new ways to get in front of potential users, right? And how that used to look before digital marketing was you had a billboard or a TV or something, like a TV ad or something like that, right? And you wanted, I've met people in the space that say, like, at the end of the day, we just want to find people and help people that are looking for it, right? And now, the way that most of the people are consuming in media and looking at things on their phone and all of that, YouTube is actually the biggest platform in terms of people that are actively going and watching content on YouTube per day. So as of right now, YouTube is like 1 billion daily active users or something crazy like that. And the reason I think this is important is because a lot of behavioral health centers will say, yes, Trevor, I think that YouTube is important. I get that I need to drive awareness for my business, but it doesn't drive me as many leads as search does, or it's not as cheap. So why would I invest in something that's not going to drive me, potential patients at a cheap rate? Why would I advertise something that's more expensive for me is essentially it, right?
Yeah.
Well, what we've found is exactly this consideration set piece where what about this, Gary? Like if I said, I'm gonna give you some money and you're gonna go buy a new pair of shoes today, you probably have 2 or 3, 4 brands that pop in your head right away on the shoes that you're gonna buy, right? What that's called is your
sneakerhead.
I can tell because I am too. But, I can tell, like, it's the same way when thinking about where I'm going to go get treatment. If me or someone in my family, if I know a place or two off the top of my head, I'm going to choose that place before actively going and researching it online. I'm only researching something online if I don't already know where I'm going to go, right? And so becoming part of this consideration set is so important in that if you can get your brand out there and get in people's heads when they do need you, that's when you will already be ahead of the game. I think the statistic that we have is like 93% of purchases come from someone that was on, quote, their day one list, basically.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that before we keep going on that?
I mean, that's you're preaching to the choir on that. I mean, I see the data on the back end. I sit on the monthly business review with clients, and they're like, last click attribution, where did it come? And I was like, wait a minute. They hit your website, they hit the GBP profile, they searched for you, they looked at your social media profile. It's not a one-stop shop. It's not a one, typically, especially in this industry, right? People are not always ready to take action. They may not be mentally ready. There is job considerations. There is all these different aspects that can prolong your decision to step into recovery or not. So being top of mind throughout that entire consideration and decision-making process is extremely valuable. And I'm always like saying, like, listen, a war and like say, okay, who gets the credit? The attribution, it's a team effort as a company that you're branding yourself. And typically, for most facilities, I know that they get maybe 30 to 50% of their admits within 1 week from initial point of contact. But most, that 70% of admits comes from, I would say, that the nurturing effect, the pipeline, that they come like 49 in average days later. I've seen some facilities where they understand that data. So, being part of the awareness and constantly reinforcing it is is equivalent to billboards and TV ads. You're constantly top of mind. So when finally ready to take the action, or you have the funding ready to step into recovery and change your life, right? Then who are you going to contact? Who comes top of mind? So comparing it with search, like a direct response campaign, it's not fair. But I think in this space, when you're looking, it has a tremendous effect. And comparative to billboards and TV ads, is just pennies on the dollar. I think the complexity for most advertisers has been creating the assets, right? How to do this, right? But that's becoming easier every day now, as I understand it, with the tools and AI, etc. Right?
I was going to say another conversation for another day, but we have the VO or product where you just make the video right there. But
So what I was seeing here on this slide, this is like this. I think this is significant.
So I guess why this is important is that, or what I'm trying to convey, and I don't want to come in and sit here and say all the conversions from search are exclusively from us. We drove all of that. I know that the facilities that I'm working with that are doing other types of advertising like billboards and TV, I know that is all part of the picture as well. I agree with you there. I guess what I'm trying to say is that YouTube is now the biggest streaming platform, 12% of overall streaming across the United States in May 2025. And this isn't from Google.
Biggest.
This is, yeah, exactly. And so I think if we keep going here,
Yeah, let's check the next slide here.
so the other thing here is like the growth that we've been seeing as well. So you have all these other streaming platforms, Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, all of that. We see that relatively it's been consistent in terms of growth, but YouTube has seen such a massive growth over the last couple of years, and I think that's you seeing Generation Z, which I know is more and more popular within this space. Like they are all watching YouTube as well, and I know that this is a very high value audience for behavioral health treatment centers.
Yes. I mean, I see the data. I understand I mean, it's this growth. I mean, exponential compared to other streaming platforms. I mean, you want to be on that. You want to jump on that train. And I think the flexibility in running campaigns, stopping, adding, changing messagings, audience targeting, the ability to track and see the visibility comparative to other medias. I mean, you can say billboards is highly effective, but tell me you get the same level of analytics with a billboard that you're getting with a YouTube ad. I mean, that is extremely valuable, and you use that intelligence to replicate across other channels. Extremely powerful. So just for that, like if you have the budget, instead of just throwing more money into one campaign type, that typically yields diminishing returns at a certain point, then start allocating, shifting budget over to another campaign type. Highly recommend YouTube for all those reasons. So thanks for highlighting that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely you want to be setting like proper expectations, right? Like this is not going to be driving the same results as a search campaign. But what YouTube does have, and I think why it's super powerful compared to a billboard or a TV ad, is as you can see on the slide here, the creators that are on YouTube are trusted by the people that are watching them, right? Like these are people that they're watching, on their weekly vlogs, or they're watching them on their daily podcasts or something like that, right? And so they trust content that they're watching. They're highly engaged in this content. And then to your other point, Gary, we can track all of the metrics on the back end of this on how many views your ad is getting versus how many impressions. So basically like an impression is I looked at it and then I swiped by. A view is I actually watched the content here. Like, so all of this ties together in that we can track this awareness as best we can. We can tie it back to how many more people are searching for your brand after seeing your ads on YouTube. And then also to hopefully we can see, or these people are trusted, and then they see a reliable behavioral health center next to them. They're going to trust that as well. But yeah, keep it going. More of like how the ads work.
Yeah.
So the way you can set it up in this space, just I'll put it bluntly, there are a lot of policy restrictions on YouTube around who you can and can't advertise to in this space. And it makes sense. Like our health and personal advertising policies, you cannot like be predatory or take advantage of someone that is in a state of emotional distress, or they're having some kind of medical issue, right? It makes sense. So what you can do is you can target your market. You can target, your top markets where your highest value VOBs come from, or you can target the markets right around you in your backyard, right? And you can still target in the same way that you would with a billboard, but we could just have those ads running across, various ad channels on YouTube.
Amen, brother. So just to tie those two things together, speaking of measurement, I would say if you're a treatment owner and you have your EMR and it's tied up with your CRM, you have all your patient data, you understand which policies they have, you understand which location they came in from, analyzing the entire data set. Now you create a YouTube campaign targeting specific audience, select days throughout the week, hours throughout the day, in specific zip codes if you want it, with specific messaging according to the levels of care or initiative, or having very emotional statements, speaking to success stories of recovery. I've seen the big boys in the industry that does this. And they're very, very successful because they know it's not like we're not comparing it to search ads. We're looking at the overall cost per admission and how do we drive to full census. Understanding we can't just drive full census with we're not a one-trick pony. We can't just run Google search ads. We have to leverage SEO. We have to have all the directories listing and content strategy, PR strategy. We have to have visibility on awareness media such as radio and YouTube, etc. That's when you win the game with a holistic strategy. But YouTube is just my number one because, I mean, what other media can you say to that specifically that you want to target? So very, very powerful. Is there any recommendations for a facility? Like, what would you say the typical barriers? How do I create a compelling asset or video? What works best for say a residential treatment center? What's the length of an ad, and how much budget should I allocate ballpark? I know that's a lot of questions in one, but I know that's on everybody's mind right now, probably after seeing this opportunity.
Yeah. Great question. So there's a ton of different information that we have available, and then that just outside of Google is available online about what makes a good ad. I think typically we call it, you want to have a good hook. You want to be able something that is enticing the user to not scroll past you essentially, or not skip the video, right? So something that is intriguing, a statistic, or something that is a visual of something that can be very relatable to someone that potentially might need to come get treatment, right? Something like that, and captures the user and captivates them, right? Then I think the other thing that I see oftentimes with a lot of brands is not introducing their brand early enough in the ad. You introduce your brand early, tell them who you are, say, hey, here's who we are, here's what we do, and then nothing can really beat those stellar visuals. I would say if you have some great visuals of the facility, the treatments that you provide, people can see exactly what you're doing and how you're going to help them. Essentially, trying to tell a story, right, on the actual ad itself. No one really responds well to just a little bit of information, but if you captivate someone with a story, those are typically what we see as the best ads. As far as budget, it really depends on your goals. It's really hard to say. I will say though that like a lot of my clients will say, "This is great, Trevor. I want to try this. I'll give you $500 next month," and then they say, "And I want an admit from it or something." You know what I mean? And so,
yeah,
I think a big thing to say to this is like it's not something that you can see results with a very, very small budget, right? Like we could definitely get some views out there and some awareness, but if you actually want this to be part of your strategy as far as driving admits and viable VOBs, typically what we see is that it's going to be your CPA maybe 2-3x what search is. And same thing, you want to have like a conversion coming per day. So you want to have your budget set accordingly there. But like I said, it all varies on like everyone's goals. There's certain populations that are smaller than others in certain areas. So you can only reach so many people. So that's like a whole other thing too. But
yeah. No, I know that was a curveball question. I would say, in general, you want to have a competitive budget allocation. You don't want to have spread your budget, have it depleted and not have enough visibility for when, a prospective patient is searching, or a significant other to the person suffering, needing to go in recovery. That's a very important point to say. Creating that awareness and brand building, I think, is the future of marketing. Building a brand is become more important than ever before. I'm saying it now, and it's going to be even more significant 12, 24 months from now. So YouTube can help with that, right? So the spouse, the best friend, when see acknowledging that the daughter, friend, sister, family member, whoever is needing treatment, that name comes to mind. And that's hard to put the finger on that attribution specifically, because then it would go through a chain of events until they get. So that building the brand in the long-term value along with the direct response helps a lot. but you have to understand that this is a lot of reach, a lot of eyeballs, and I typically say we shouldn't even talk together unless you have at least $20,000 to $50,000 to invest in the ad campaign, because otherwise these $1 million campaigns is going to wipe us out, and we don't accumulate enough data. So it's more important if you don't have that budget to invest now, give it thought. Create the right assets, make sure you have those emotional testimonials you can sprinkle in with a narrative for storytelling, stories of hope. And then when you're ready with a budget to invest and make a push, that's when it's good to do to YouTube. Yeah, that's my 2 cents in the top, just to back up everything you said there, Trevor. Now, anything else on YouTube? Sorry?
I was going to say, like, those costs, luckily with these AI generated videos that people can create so easily now, the cost of creating a video, which you mentioned earlier, was the most expensive piece of it, right? Like, you have to go film a commercial somewhere and all that. Yes, you still could do that, but the barrier to entry now is so much lower. And I think that opens up the door for a lot more advertisers to be trying YouTube, because it's so much easier in that budget that you use to pay the camera crew and have them edit it and all of that. You could try and just create an AI generated ad, or you can even just do it yourself on your phone. I've seen even in some cases, right? And create an ad that way. And all that UGC content works really well now. We see that on TikTok like all the time, right? And so the barrier to entry is so much lower. I hopefully that allows more treatment centers to be able to try these types of awareness level marketing in the future. Come the next year or two. Yeah,
absolutely. Trevor, this is amazing. I hope, you and I could talk for hours about this. I'm sure there's so much more to unpack. I think that's going to be a second round of our podcast. Thank you so much for being on this episode. And if anybody wants to contact you, what's the best way to reach out and learn more about your work and your experience?
Yeah, LinkedIn. My email is just my name @google.com if you want to reach out with any kind of questions or anything like that. But thank you so much, Gary. I appreciate it. The work that your team is doing at Elevate, I've seen firsthand, is doing great things in order to help these behavioral health centers drive new patients, drive new admits, and keep it up. It's been a pleasure.
Trevor, you are a rock star, and I appreciate everything you brought to the table today. Thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge here today, and we'll talk soon, I'm sure. And thanks again to everybody for listening in the conversation. You can see the deck that Trevor shared in the show notes, and you can also hit us up, and we'll share with you expanded details on these 3 opportunities that we highlighted today. Thanks again, and tune in soon.
All right, thanks, Gary.
Elevate.io offers a comprehensive 360-degree patient acquisition solution for behavioral health centers. If you want to improve your reach, subscribe to our podcast on the left so you won't miss any new content, or catch up on previous episodes by